How can national statistical institutes and universities collaborate with private companies in order to get access to innovative data sources, such as mobile network operator data or card transaction data? That's the topic of his presentation, which was prepared with Latifa Oukelu, who's research director at the University Gustave Eiffel, and David Pougny, who's also research director at Télécom Paris and Institut Polytechnique de Paris, CREST CNRS. As for myself, I'm Marie-Pierre Joubert. I'm Deputy Head of Official Statistics Innovation Lab at the French National Statistical Institute. So first, I'll begin with stating the difference between three different kinds of data that we can use in national statistical institutes. First of all, surveys. So surveys are really defined by national statistical institutes and other institutes in all the observation instruments. So all is controlled. Questionnaire is defined with a variable of interest. For the sampling scheme, the analysis and the correction of non-response are easy to do because of all this methodological information. This was also defined by Alain Desrosières, which is one of our major researchers in official statistics, who defined quantifying as defining and then measuring. So we have the control on all the parameters. Then we also use some administrative data. As regards administrative data, the concepts and the temporality are imposed by the administrative process. So we don't have a control of everything. There is no observation protocol. So it's more difficult to quantify measurement errors. Also, there are some non-response that we don't have information about. Yet, there is a certain degree of exhaustiveness which is linked to the mandatory nature of certain data. So we are exploring more and more the importance of administrative data. Yet the topic of this presentation is mostly centered on non-traditional data sources. So what are the issues behind these non-traditional data sources? So it's often that we need to prepare a partnership framework with a private operator who owns the data and has access to it. There are some methodological and technical challenges in order to process large databases, which are designed often for a very different purposes. Yet, on the other side, we are exploring these new data sources, these new non-traditional data sources, because they allow for more frequent and more precise indicators, and also they allow to broaden the scope of analysis. So first, I go in mobile phone data. Mobile phone data is seen since many years as a promising source. It tracks actually the interactions between the mobile phone device and the network infrastructure. So these interactions reveal the approximate position of the mobile phone owner on a regular basis, which is very useful for exploring the presence and the mobility of population. These sources are usually recorded for billing and maintenance issues, so not at all for sociodemographic studies, and they enable us to study presence and mobility of people. Yet, there are some already identified limits. On this, I base these elements on the synthesis made by a group led by Eurostat, which is a task force on mobile network operators. And in this group, we underlined three main identified limits. First, the temporal uncertainty. So events are uneven and non-uniform. It's every time the mobile connects to the network, but it's not very even. There's also a spatial uncertainty, because we only know to which antenna the mobile has connected, but the geographical precision is determined by the antenna's coverage, and this coverage depends from multiple parameters. There's also a population coverage uncertainty. Some people own multiple devices. We don't always have precise information of the representativeness of the operator. Sometimes we lack of sociodemographic information. All these are important sources of uncertainty. Yet, National Statistical Institutes have a long-standing interest in mobile data, and this led to many collaborations. So just in a nutshell, we began a research partnership between the French NSI, the Orange operator, and Eurostat from 2016. Then during the COVID crisis, we had a special partnership between INSEE and 3 operators. And now I'll go more deeply later in the research partnership we've made with Orange and the University Gustave Eiffel. Our main study areas are data and population at a fine temporal and spatial scale, and the mobility of individuals, which is observed through origin-destination matrix. So first area of interest is daily present. So we wish to study population present in an area at different times of the day, different days of the week, or different months of the year. This need was expressed by local authorities in order to calibrate the range of care, waste treatment, rescue services, and to better understand the commercial dynamics of an area. An example of what we've done in previous years with mobile phone data was to study the present population by month. So you see here in red are the areas where the population increased in July and August, sorry, in comparison to June, so which was the month before the summer holidays. So you see that during the summer holiday, population increased at the seaside, countrysides, and here also in the mountains, in all these red dots, and it decreased in the urban big cities. Whereas here you see the difference between the month of July and August and the month of September, and you see the corresponding decrease of population. So even in these first partnerships, we had interesting insights into the evolution of population between summer times and regular days. Then we also use mobile phone data combined with stats data, which we have at a very precise level in National Statistical Institutes, in order to study residential segregation. So here is the distribution of low-income people in Paris at 6 a.m. So this is actually supposed to be when people are still in their home. So you see that in the northeast of Paris, the share of low-income inhabitants is very high, whereas at 4 p.m., where people are mostly in their working place or doing some commercial explorations or leisure time, the share of low income is really less segregated. So there is an evolution of social-spatial segregation during the day, which is interesting to observe. Lastly, during the COVID crisis, we combined 3 MNO data in order to measure the distribution of population during the COVID crisis. Actually, we had a demand from local public policymakers which wanted to know whether their population increased a lot because people were spending the lockdown, for instance, in their secondary homes in the countrysides, and they needed this information to calibrate the public services. So here in green, it's Paris, it's a zoom of the Paris area, and you see that the population decreased a lot during this period. Whereas in red is where population increased, mostly people went to their secondary home or students went back to their parents. So we also had the numbers that Paris lost 20% of its inhabitants during the COVID crisis. Then we also use mobile data to study daily and leisure mobility, to better understand interactions between the territories and everyday behavior of individuals, so working from home, frequentation of facilities. We also analyze everyday frequenting of functional urban areas and living zones built with NSOs traditional sources. Actually, in order to conduct this project and also to combine mobile data with other sources, we are having a multi-partner research project, which is called MOBITIC, Mobility and Presence Using Information and Communication Technologies. This project is financially supported by the French National Research Agency. It's a collaboration between the French National Statistical Institute, the mobile operator Orange, and the University Gustave Eiffel. We aim to fusion various data sets, including MNO data aggregated at a detailed spatial scale, road vehicle counting loop data public transport ticketing information, and comprehensive socio-demographic data collected by INSEE. Before exploring more in detail what we'll do with this project, I'll go in card transaction data, which is the second innovative data source that we have access to. Card transaction data have precise data on individual commercial activity. Actually, we have information about interbank payment data associated to each geolocated payment terminal. The fact that this information are aggregated at the card level allows to have anonymized information and to link transactions made by a same card. So it's interesting because we can follow actually the evolution of card transaction made by the same card data holder, so which allows to link territories. The time accuracy is to the nearest second, yet it's a big data source with a lot of technical challenge. Actually, it was originally collected for fraud prevention. So the structure is not immediately adapted to socioeconomic analysis, which leads to a big analysis work on this source. How do we access to this data? Actually, we're part of a research share, which allows us to collaborate on private data. The goal of a digital finance chair is to use card transaction data for more accurate predictions of economic activity across various geographical and temporal scales. The data provider is Groupement des Cartes Bancaires, which is a private economic interest group that brings together a majority of France's financial institutions with the goal of facilitating interbanking for payment cards. This allows us, as I said, to have access to card payment data at the geolocated transaction level for each anonymized card. The academic supervision is made by Télécom Paris and Université Paris de Panthéon-Assas. So this is a three-part collaboration: private operator, university, and National Statistical Institutes. Caisse des dépôts et consignations, the public financial institution, are also part of this chair. The goal of this partnership is to improve the knowledge of card transaction data. It enhances the reliability of credit card transaction data. It also provides academic expertise to the data provider. Actually, the private data owner is also interested in AR and fraud detection, and the work is done in close interaction with the data science team of the Groupement des Cartes Bancaires CB, which are also very interested in studying the feasibility of these AI tools. The second goal of this partnership is to understand the impact of innovations in payments. And we study the impact of contactless payments and also central bank digital currencies on the card payment markets. Nowcasting is also an important interest of this chair. And more generally, the goal of this three-part partnership is to support the general interest through original research. That's also why credit card data owners are interested in this partnership. So lastly, how do we combine all these research projects in order to study public policy interested issues, combining all these new data sources? I'll make my focus on two main projects. The first one is about functional urban areas. Functional urban areas is a territorial zoning which allows to study France through an assessment matrix of the territory. How is this constructed? So we define densely populated centers and their commuting areas where at least 15% of the workers work in the center according to the census. When we released this study zoning, we have lots of questions because actually 15% of the workers can be a little part of inhabitants in areas where, for instance, lots of retired people or students work. So also, is this pattern an everyday pattern, or are there days where lots of people work from home? How is it in weekends or in holiday period? So new sources allow us to shed light on these issues. First issue is, how is the rise in working from home changing the shape of areas depending on the day of the week? Do people outside the scope of active workers also travel regularly to the center? And what's the impact of mobility on consumption patterns? So this issue will be studied by combining MNO data and credit card transaction data. The second research project is about living zones. So living zones are the smallest territory on which residents have access to facilities and the everyday services, personal services, commerce, education, sport, recreation. Our main issue is, do people really use the nearest facility or do they go further away? This is a big hypothesis in building this study zoning, and thanks to both card transaction and mobile phone data, we can go and study this question. Then how often is each facility used? How do the presence of large shopping center on the outskirts affect the shopping in town center? This is a big public policy issue because we're trying to revitalize our central areas. And does this depend on the extent of teleworking? Then, as you see, combining both mobile phone data and transaction card data, thanks to this three-part partnership between NSOs, universities, and private operators, allows us to shed light on local issues in a really new way, and a way that complements the data which are produced by official statistics. Combining all these data allows new avenues for research. Then I'll insist on the fact that a close collaboration with operators is really required because these data are not initially designed for socioeconomic analysis, so we really need expert information. Then I also underline that there are lots of European projects currently underway, which are led by Eurostat. There is a very interesting project which is called Multi-MNO project, which aims to combine mobile network operators by multiple operators in order to shed light on public policy issues, but it's a very technical project with a technical pipeline allowing to combine this data and to respect confidentiality and GDPR issues. There's also a European project which aims to combine many different sources with mobile network operator data, which is called MNO Mine, and of course the task force on MNO data, which synthesizes all of these projects and produces some position paper, which influence also European discussions. So future prospects to follow, both at or national level, but also European projects. Thanks a lot for the attention, and don't hesitate to write or to ask questions during the conference.